Hey, um, my name's Ryan, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about Scratch. I used to spend a lot of time on Scratch when I was a kid, and it was the first thing that taught me programming, which I'm still very thankful for today, because I'm now a graduated computer science student, and I can really thank Scratch for giving me my initial interest. Um, but yeah, this is Scratch. If you don't know, it's a website that is designed to teach kids how to code. And the way that it does that is it uses these blocks. If you're watching this video, you already know what Scratch is. Move, rotate. It's a lot of fun, especially if you're just starting out. But I'm not going to be a weird old guy. Be like, Scratch is great for beginners. I think that Scratch is not just great for beginners, but I know that Scratch is also great for people that are not beginners anymore. I used to get down with some really fun projects back in the day. It's been a while. I don't know what this is actually. Oh, I know what this is. But Scratch can also be an avenue or a place for complicated projects and a lot of like unique concepts, a lot of fun stuff uh, that me as a teenager was really interested in doing. So I joined Scratch a little bit ago, um, and I'm just here using it as Newgrounds 2.0, I guess, making like Flash games and having a great time. But eventually I decided I wanted to do something more technical, and Scratch has quite the technical community. Um, Not that that really mattered for me because I didn't really talk to anyone, but I just think that, well, let's just look at some of this stuff. Um, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do. This is one of the text editors I made, or text engines. I used to be really into this, making writing on the screen with the pen. I was yeah, a big fan of the pen. I was inspired by some of the other pen people at the time, and I'm sure this is still happening. I don't really know. I'm not really. I sometimes come back to visit, just check out some stuff, but I'm not really like keeping up with what's new in the Scratch community. But yeah, so I had this text editor and this text engine. And honestly, if you know about Scratch and you think about text engines, you probably know the oh, I'm not gonna be able to find it, am I? Let's see. It's pen text engine. You might find DJ Pro, but you're probably gonna find Rex, who's he was making all the cool text engines back in the. It wasn't that long ago, but yeah, I wanted to do something like this, which I did. I ended up doing stuff very similar. Um, I was also into math when I actually um, when I had passions and stuff, and I was all into like trying to solve math problems, like find the closest point on a curve. That's what this project is. They're doing the same thing, except they're using an iterative method that's, I think, a lot smarter. And I think there's a better, even a smarter way of doing it. Nope, this is the older one. What? Okay. Did some of that. Was really into doing math stuff. Made a few math videos that were really bad. Made some math projects too that aren't really that bad. But this is all Scratch, right? So this is like basically trying to do as much as I could. But here's the thing: it wasn't like it was a passion, but it was also my programming outlet. I didn't know any other languages in 2022. I maybe knew Python, um, and that was only 3 years ago. So I was just going on Scratch as my native language for programming since 2016, and I didn't know how to program in any other language. So eventually I was like, I want to do like a real programming language where you write things, where you're like, oh, I got a text editor. I'm gonna write things in it. And when I did that, oh, we're gonna see some of this later. When I started switching over to first Java and then later Python, I found it very difficult because I didn't know how to do anything, and I knew how to do everything in Scratch. So if I wanted to build something, my go-to tool was right here, and that made it really difficult to switch to anything else because I was just super slow. It's like I want to just do something that is quote unquote basic, but which would be in Scratch. But in Java, if you want to like make an application that is like you can actually like do things in that isn't just on the terminal, you need all these like things. It's a steeper upfront cost of libraries you have to install, of frameworks you have to learn. It's not as accessible. Obviously, Scratch is very accessible, being made for. I keep saying it's made for kids, but you know, adults use it too. But you know, the way that it is, very accessible to make things that are on the screen that you can see and interact with, which I found was very difficult to do with other languages. So I went to Python more seriously when I actually learned it in university on my freshman year. And I was like, all right, I'm going to actually switch from Scratch to Python. So I made all these Python programs. I was using Pygame. None of these work anymore because I used absolute paths in my. I didn't know what I was doing. It's really bad. I didn't know how to do Python. I still debatably don't know how to do Python. I don't even know. This is a string. I thought this was a comment, I think. Maybe this was a comment. This is only 4 years old code, but Python feels like it changes every other weekday, other weekend. So yeah, I was gonna use Pygame. Eventually, I found out about Turtle, which I found to be more similar to the Scratch pen, and therefore I was gravitating towards it more. I think I have a few things with Turtle. So I was like, this is like Scratch, right? This is the Scratch pen. This is what it does. Pygame lets me actually put sprites on the screen, but you know, for a while I had been moving away from sprites and moving more towards just using the pen for everything. Like, this is all pen rendered, and I was like super happy that I had a text engine. And the things you can do with pen is like, you know, all this arbitrary shape stuff. And I found a lot of passion for doing that. And you know, you had like arrows and whatever. With all these pen projects, or like 1, 2, 3, that one other. I should have I should have like prepared more for doing this, but either way. So yeah, I was doing Turtle with Python because it was like Scratch, but I wanted to make it actually like Scratch, so I made this library, Turtle Tools, for Python, which gave me a bunch of stuff that Scratch has, but that Turtle doesn't have by default. So I want to know where the mouse is, which I don't even know how you do this. I don't remember because I don't use this anymore. Whether the mouse is being held down. I could even detect the right click, something you can't do on Scratch, or the middle click, or the scroll wheel, something that you can do on Scratch, but it's unintuitive. And then also whether your keys are pressed and stuff. What was I gonna? Oh, so yeah. So I wanted to make Scratch programs in Python, and I eventually did a few of these during my freshman year. Was successful. I'm not sure if I still have them. Here we go. So this is a Python version of one of my Scratch projects. Let's pull that up. I got really into this one. I don't know where it is though. There it is. I guess I made this in 2022. This would have been sophomore year. Yeah, I think this was for a class originally, but it very quickly became like my own personal project that I worked on for actual months. First on Scratch, so it's just some logic gate simulator. It's some nerd stuff that I'm not gonna swear in a video about Scratch. It's some nerd stuff that maybe people will care about, but I was really into in my sophomore year when I learned about logic gates in one of my classes, and I wanted to do stuff with them. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna make this, and obviously I went to Scratch first because that was what I was the most comfortable with and I could do it the fastest in, and all these graphics, and it's all graphics, right? So it's like Scratch is good for this. Well, not really, but it's the pen, and I knew how to use it, so I did that. But eventually I did move this to Python, and as you can see, it's pretty much the same program. It's 60 frames a second now. It's so much smoother. So I was like, that's so much fun. But I can already have 60 frames if I just go to Turbo Warp, which if you're into doing technical Scratch, you will know this app or this website very well. So if I wanted to do 60 frames, oh, it's dark mode as well. I don't even know. I don't even remember doing that. You can turn that on, and now your Scratch project's at 60 frames a second, and it runs way faster. So it's like, and I can turn on the high quality pen, so it actually looks good. Look at that. And now this project actually starts to look like more serious when it looks like this. And you could maybe fool someone into thinking that this is a real application, as long as you don't like, you know, look at the Scratch stuff or what's the, look at all the Scratch stuff, or you know, and also the aspect ratio and like a bunch of other stuff. But in Python here, it is a real standalone window. It's also 60 frames. It's like pixelated, but you know, we can't win them all. And it also is worse. It just performs worse. If I have some large application or some large big thing, which I made a bunch of these fun logic gates things. 7 segment displays. Let's do it. And I have to put -F because I forgot how to use this program. It's actually just so slow. It's slower than Turbo Warp. It might be slower than Scratch. It's really tough. Like, what happened to my 60 frames? It's literally 2 now. And I bet this will still work if I paste it into Scratch. Oh yeah. This is like, it's actually faster in Scratch, which is like, that's sad. That's more of a Python, that's sad for Python. Or maybe it's just me who's bad at programming and doesn't know how to make things performant. But when I realized that it was literally going to be worse, then I was like, I don't see the point of doing Python. If Scratch is faster, it looks better. You know, it's not real programming, or like, that's what I told myself. But you could maybe argue that it is real programming. I don't know. You can compile it to an HTML file, which I did, and then you can just click on it and run it, and then it runs in your browser, and it looks like a real application. It runs in the browser rather than standalone. But that's, oh, you can also make it standalone, I think. With Turbo Warps, it's got like a, I don't know. I think you can export or something. I remember doing that. It's been a while. But eventually I did find a way off of Scratch, but while still being on Scratch, in the sense that I still do the same things. Because this code is, I'll tell you about that in a second. I'm just building up the suspense. So if we look at what the code is in this or this, I literally just looked at my Scratch code and like did it. Not quite exactly the same because Scratch has a really nice I say, but like it's got parallelization, right? You have like, oh, I shouldn't have done this. Okay. And it pains me to, it's like so painful to even like try to navigate this in 2025. But you know, Scratch has parallelism in the sense that I can do this and I can have two things running and they kind of like run at the same time. Whereas you can't really do that in Python. I mean, you can, but like I didn't know how to do that. So I just have a main loop, which I guess is here. I don't even have a, okay. I don't even have a, I can't even look at it, can I? Okay. I guess I made a class. I don't even know what this is. I don't remember doing any of this. But yeah, a lot of these functions are just straight up same exact logic. Like I have this one. It's somewhere in here. You know, we used to be able to in Scratch too, like click on this and click definition. But those, I don't know why that's removed. I'm never gonna be able to find this. Oh, render wire. Nope. Compare angle. I think I had that one right here. So I was like, all right, I'll take these functions, which I didn't even know at the time, these like custom blocks in Scratch. Like they're called functions in other languages. I didn't know what I was learning, to be honest. It's really cool that a lot of the Scratch stuff actually, like you can actually use it later, or like you can see the parallels when you learn an actual language. And I keep dunking on Scratch saying it's like a fake language, and I don't believe that, but I did believe that, and I'm gonna talk like that is the case. There's no point to this video. Okay, anyway. I just took all these functions, put them into Python, changed a few things to make the logic work out, made it work with this like tkinter turtle thing, that the way it works, I don't know. Why is it just T? Oh, okay. Who knows? And different keys were different on Windows and Linux. That's great. So I did this, but only for like probably 6 months before I got a better. Here's the payoff for that suspense. Eventually, I switched to C. So C is something that no one can say I'm not using a real language anymore. But I still get to use Scratch. So let's look at this. Let's look at the same project that I made in C, which is actually the better version, the best version, because I kept updating it for like 2 more years. Why not? Let's go to here. Okay. So this, you know, it's going to look the same. It does the same thing. And it's also just a copy of Scratch. Like, I bet the same functions here too. There it is. It's got the same logic in it as well. It's now just in C. And I used, because I was doing Python, like, I don't know why I did it like this, but like, I made this struct. And then every time I passed it into something, I called it self. So then I could do self dot, because it's like, you know, in Python, you do like self dot. So I just went like this. I went to here, I pasted it, and then I put semicolons at the end of everything. And that, I don't know what the point of doing that was, but it's basically like the Python where I was like, all right, sorry about that. That was, I'll edit it out. I'm not going to edit anything. It's like, oh, I'm going to define all my variables. And then it's like, oh, I'm going to make all my variables. Now I just have to give them a type. And I have to define them here and then set them here instead of in Python where I can just define them and set them at the same time, which would have been nice. And then like the first thing I figured out with that I wanted in C, now that we're talking C, we're like 2 steps away from Scratch, right? Like Python isn't like Scratch, but it's more like Scratch than C is, because Python also doesn't have types. all these variables. I can't believe that I actually used to do this. And like all of these, by the way, they're like for loop variables. Scratch doesn't have a for loop, which I actually think is kind of cool. Let's look at some of the baseline features that Scratch has when compared to other languages. In C, the way you make a normal loop, and in Python, I don't even know if this is the way you're supposed to make a normal loop, but I assume, let's actually open up a new one. I assume that in Python, this is what you do when you make a loop. And you do this range thing, even though it, like, so you can do for I in list, where list is some list containing like anything, and then I will like, it'll print out hello and test. So it's a little bit weird because it's I is like, in this case, it's not a number. And the way you do it in Scratch, which I have been doing for years, is, let's find a Scratch repeat loop. Is you just use this, or you use this. This is a while loop. It's the inverse of a while loop. In every other language, Python has this. So you do while. While I is less than 4, and let's say I is 0. I almost put a semicolon there. And then you put an I put. Oh, you can't do that. I forgot. And then you do something. And Scratch, you can do that, but you don't, because what you would do instead is you do this, or like, but you need a variable. So the variable doesn't come by default. And I haven't even talked about C yet, where you do for I, or int I guess. I is less than 4, I plus plus. When you do this, you're doing the same thing as a repeat 4 times. And then you have a variable that gets incremented. So in Scratch, you have to actually like put the variable in here and do it. And then you have to set it at the start like that. And then it will work. And the one fun thing you can do is like you can repeat this many times. And obviously you can still do this in C, but if you want to just have a repeat without this variable, you can do that too. And in C, you literally can't. If you want to repeat 4 times, your choices are to copy and paste the code 4 times or whatever, or you can use a loop and do it in here. But then like you have this I doing literally nothing, and I always felt that in Scratch, making variables that don't do anything is going to make your project slower, which I don't know if that's true or not. But I would reuse variables, these counter variables, in the most, like, thinking about it now, just the headache that it, or the brain power it requires to keep track of everything. So here was my philosophy, right? I would use this many variables. So I need all these iterator variables, so these like 11 series for this function. But if I'm not using one of them, like if 2 functions never run at the same time, which they never do in this program anyway, because I think everything's tick-based. But I guess like if you can call another function, right? Like this one calls this one, it needs to use 3.0. And they're like global, like they're not global, they're local. But I mean, they're global to the class, and they're not a class, it's a sprite. Okay, it's not making any sense. It will never make sense. But the variable, if I change it inside one of these functions, like it's changed in every one of them. If I use it again, and it's this name, and to make a new one, you have to like do this. It's hard to articulate how wild of a workflow this is when you're only familiar with Scratch. If you program in other languages, like making variables, and there are different scopes of variables, and it happens so often, like you don't even think about it. You might just make one as a partial sum to some math equation and forget about it, use it once, and then you forget about it. In Scratch, if you make a variable, it's a big deal, because you have to like, it appears here forever. So every time you make a new variable, it's going to be here forever. So you have to really think about when you want to use variables. And I was like, oh, like I'm not going to use a variable that does this because I only use it once. Actually, I don't. I use it like here too. But if I made a variable to set this to that, then I would have another variable here. It's like technical debt, and I don't want to do that in this case. But in some cases, if it's a complicated math thing, I want to store the value. So you have to kind of make the decision. And I used to think that like the variables in here were like more free. Like I don't know why I was thinking about performance, but I was in Scratch. Like if you have these variables, like, and you pass something into them, then you kind of get a free variable without having it to appear on the sidebar, and it's some computation. So, and it's like stored in my mind. I don't know if it probably is, but you know, when you set index 1 to this, and then you use it all over the place, you're not doing this calculation every time. So this is not a calculation that does anything, but then you're saving that processing power in theory. I actually don't know if any of that's true. Who cares about micro optimizations like that anyway? I used to think that was like a big deal, and I was like really trying to design performant projects. And now I don't do that because I'm using C, and I have a lot of headroom. Anyway, C allowed me to make things way faster. So let's load the same file in. Let's load like a way bigger file. Like there's a whole computer. I was really into this. It's actually kind of laggy. There's a lot of components. However, I did make an optimization here to give it textures, and now it's smooth. It uses OpenGL, but here's the thing about this C stuff, is that it's still Scratch. And to show you that, I'll just show you the library that I made. That has another library that didn't load. So that's why everything's ran. Okay, maybe it's not gonna work, whatever. I don't need the VS Code to tell me that my functions don't work because I know they do. So the first thing I had to do was make lists. And this is an old version of this library that like, it's not that old, but I wanted to make Scratch-like lists or Python-like lists, the way lists work in Scratch. You know, you have stuff like this. So this is a list that has strings in it. But there's also lists that have like, there's a string, there's a number, there's a string, there's an integer, you know. And I did this all the time. Like this was like a big thing for me. I was big on like encoding stuff into lists like this, and then like I don't really like it's actually not that hard to think about the way that it works because I still kind of do this kind of stuff. But like I would throw things in lists, like the positions of who knows, probably the components. Those are their positions where they drawn, or like not where they're drawn, but like where they're set, and then they get transformed by the movement. So I wanted to make a list in C, so I did that, and it uses this union. Don't worry about how I program in C. It's not really that good, but because it's Scratch, like we kind of accrue these kinds of things, you know, as you learn programming. If you learn in a different way, you're gonna do it in a different way. This was the way that made sense to me. So I did this, I made a list, and then with that list I made a turtle in C with the OpenGL. So it's basically just the same thing as the turtle in Python, but it's faster. And it has like Scratch features, like having the circular pen. I think that the Python one has the circular pen too. I think that it does. But I could give my library functions that Scratch never had. I can make it draw a triangle or a circle or a square, mostly a triangle. Because back in the day, we used to draw triangles in Scratch. And it was called these triangle fill. Like this was a big one. It was like, how many triangles can we draw performantly? And we were going to use this like wacky algorithm where we draw like the outside and a circle in the middle. I don't know why I'm going to demonstrate what this looks like. Okay, just make sure that this isn't going to like actually save anything. you wanted to draw a triangle that was filled, you have to do it with circles. So you make these lines which have circular endpoints, not quite as depicted. They're not like sharp like that. That's not how it works in Scratch, like in the pen. And we're talking pen at this point. And then you make the circle like here, something like this. And then you like, technically you can make like one here. This is not how they did it. They actually probably moved this circle, but like, I don't know how these triangle fillers ever worked. I never made them. Because I kind of just got off Scratch before I got to that point, but I bet I would have. And then you like fill all the gaps, and eventually you like, you know, you can like pencil style with the pen, kind of go like this with a bigger pen, and you want to optimize it, right? You want to make it like so it uses the least amount of like going over. It's wild that you have to do that to draw triangles, which are like what they use the triangles for is like the basic for doing other kinds of shapes. You can make any shape out of triangles, even the 3D ones. So you have to do it like this. Whereas in C and then like in the computer, the circles are actually made out of triangles. Everything's a triangle. This circle's not made out of triangles. These circles are made out of triangles. These are made out of like square segments, but they're two triangles next to each other. What was the point of this? Oh, I can just draw triangles. And it's like the fastest that you could ever possibly draw a triangle. And I'm saying that, and I know it's not true because of this. And don't really think too much about it, that I'm using the fixed function. If you know about OpenGL, then you're going to say this is like a bad thing to do because it's like old. I don't really know. I know it's not the right thing to do. You're supposed to write a shader. I wrote a shader, but it was slow. So I just use these instead for most things. And then I put textures eventually, but I didn't want to put textures. Textures are like sprites. So it's like an image. I have it in here. This project is the only one that uses them. So I have these images, and I guess they're white. I didn't even know that. Because I guess they're... Whoa. I forgot that this project is ancient. Okay. None of these are white. They're all black. Okay, I don't know. I think I just edit their color. These are images, like a Scratch sprite, that you can draw on the screen. But it's more limited than the sprite because the sprite has audio and it's got code associated with it. It's like a class, but Scratch has it combined an image with a bunch of code and with some sounds, and it has different images you can swap through. It's kind of like you can build that in anything, but like this is the way they had it. And because it was the first thing that I learned, it was like the fundamental, like a sprite is the fundamental block in which you build the rest of your program on, but it's really an arbitrary collection of data if you think about it. Like, and I realized that when I started making stuff with lists instead of sprites. I was really into this, and I don't think I ever did it very well. Actually, I know I didn't. But if we look at a lot of these projects, and I'm not going to look at them in the Scratch editor because they're not going to load, and they're going to save, and I don't want them to save. Well, first of all, you can already see that this project is two sprites, and one of them doesn't do anything. So it's one sprite, and this backdrop doesn't do anything either. And it's one sprite. One reason is like, pen. You don't need another sprite if you're going to render everything with pen. But there's quite a big difference between sprite-based projects and ones that use one sprite. And I found that for me, it actually made, for big projects, it made more sense for me, even with something like this, which is a bunch of images, to just do it in one sprite. So I could just, I don't know why, it just was more orderly in my brain. Most projects that do stuff like this are going to use a bunch of sprites. Let's look at some of my favorite projects ever. Let's actually not look at my unshared projects. Like this one. Love this. Still go back to this sometimes and play it, even though it's actually 10 years old. It doesn't mean it's still good, obviously. But if you look at here, it's full of sprites. It's all sprite based. and they all have this code, and it's like, this is how Scratch is meant to be. This is what you were supposed to do when you program in Scratch. You're supposed to make a bunch of different images. It's half for artists and half for programmers, right? Like, there's a whole artist community on Scratch, and they make amazing stuff, even though everyone's logo looks the same. Sorry, um, well, there's so much. This is what you're supposed to do in Scratch. I don't do that for some reason. I was like, I think it's more organized to make everything a clone or a pen or a stamp. Stamps look bad, so I didn't end up doing it. I think I made clones. And then there was a whole system for clones to have a clone ID, which is like the one global variable. Nope, it's a local. I don't remember how it works. I remember that you could abuse some kind of types of variables such that clones would have their own, each one. I think it was a local variable if you did that. And you give each clone an ID, and they work kind of like threads in other languages, which is such a difficult concept, threads. But in Scratch, they are like less, they make more sense, which most things do. Okay, sorry, that was badly phrased. It is easier to do most things in Scratch than it is in other languages. Easier in the sense that like it's more accessible. But once you start doing like more complicated things, it's harder to do it in Scratch. If you only know Scratch, it isn't harder, it's easier. But if you know other languages, Scratch seems very strange in some of its decisions. But one of the ones that it seems like the whole like clone thing made more sense to me for a long time than threads did. Threads always felt so scary until I started using them more, and now they make a lot more sense. And clones don't make any sense to me anymore. So I guess it's just like a bias towards things you already know, which is like, of course. I don't know. I know that Scratch is good because I learned the very fundamentals of programming through Scratch. And I learned more than that. I learned a lot of stuff in Scratch that shouldn't have been learned in Scratch. And I'm not mad that that happened, but I am sad when I see other people kind of doing that, where they're learning all their stuff in Scratch and doing things that are really, really impressive, but they're still scratchers, only scratchers. If we look at 3D, I mean, like, right, this person probably wasn't just a scratcher, but I think that here they were. I don't know where, like, they haven't posted in probably 7 or 8 years. Let's see. Yeah, it's been a while. And I bet you they're not 17. Hey, I know this person. And I also bet you that they don't use Scratch anymore. Well, I know that because they're not doing anything. And I also bet that if they do program, they're doing it obviously on something that isn't Scratch. So they were on Scratch, they learned their stuff on Scratch, and then they went somewhere else. Hey, I follow this person. Anyway, this person is a prolific, like a liker of projects, which I like to see these a lot. Like, I was like, oh, that looks pretty cool. But what should you learn on Scratch? Yes, I think that you should. Scratch is more, it's actually more than just learning to program. It's also a place for artists. It's a place for people that like to make music, which I also like to do. It's a place for, it's a social media site for 12-year-olds, which is really funny. Like, I love doing this. I don't know why. I like, this is 6 minutes ago. I don't know what the context of anything here is, because it's a bunch of 10-year-olds that use Griffpatch's profile as a chat room. But the social media aspect of Scratch is really fun if you're 12, which I was. Well, I was probably a little bit older. I was like 16, which maybe was too old to be participating, which I wasn't really participating. But I think that's one big, it's a big thing to have stuff that you make have positive reinforcement. When I get a message, I still log on to Scratch so I can see if I get any messages. It's been a long time since I got one. That's not that long. Sometimes I get a lot of messages and I'm like, I still get happy when I see the messages. And that is a positive reinforcement for someone who's trying to not only learn to code, but also become a creative, become someone who makes things. And it's like so cool. There are people that have learned how to do graphic design, how to draw, how to program, how to make music. It's a community of people that like to make things online. That's a caveat because most things in Scratch are relating to Scratch are going to be online. I think it used to be like a big Arduino compatible thing. I remember the Arduino stuff in Scratch 1.4, and I don't know if that still existed in Scratch 2, and I definitely don't know if it still exists now, and I definitely don't think it's a big deal anymore, as in like it's not a big thing that Scratch pushes anymore that many people do, but I remember it used to be. But yeah, online creator, artist, it's a place where people that are young get like their first experiences in doing something that they might enjoy doing for the rest of their life, or at least for decades, which is just like, it's amazing. But what's the point of this? Well, I was just gonna talk about how I moved away from Scratch. And now I don't use Scratch anymore. The last thing I did was technically this, but really it was this, and this was in 2023, which isn't that long ago. I wanted to make a game, and Scratch is still the place where I go to make a game because I don't know how to make a game in my C thing. I can only make pen stuff where I've made a bunch of applications, but not actual games. And this is a sprite-based game, but I think it's all clones again. I actually don't remember. I don't have a memory anymore because I've been too busy. Let's find out. And I'm still oh, it's actually like a few sprites. Okay. I'm a terrible artist, always have been, but I really like this concept, so I was like, I'm gonna make this game, even though this game is super old. I had this idea 8 years ago, and I'm only making it last year, for real. And it's not that good. It's like, okay, it's a tower defense game. It was fun to make, and it's also double the speed right now because I have 60 frames a second on. Is there a way to turn it off? Nope. I can turn on turbo mode. Oh, I just, hold up. Sorry. There's so many Scratch things that it's like, I thought that, like when I was back programming, I was like, turbo mode. Oh yeah, that's just like a thing that programs do. Like, no. Like, I go to C and I want to do this with turbo mode. Can you put turbo mode on? It's not a real thing. And I spent 5 years always checking this check every time I make a function, which I'm gonna call it run without screen refresh. Yes, make a raycaster. Make it run without screen refresh. If you make it, otherwise it'll be really slow. Like, none of it made sense as to why. I just knew that it was, and for all I knew, that was what programming was. And it's really cool to find out that it's not that, but it is also scary, and it makes it hard to move away from Scratch. But you definitely can do it, and I think that if you have the opportunity, and if you're someone who loves doing Scratch and doing technical Scratch projects, wow, this is really laggy, and you only know Scratch, this is the video for you. I don't know if that's a lot of people, That's probably not that many people. But yeah, that's what I just wanted to say. Um, Scratch is very cool. It's very great. But leaving Scratch, not leaving, but learning stuff outside of Scratch in the domain of programming is something you're going to have to do anyway if you want to pursue programming as a job. But it's also something that can be just as rewarding. Um, and that's the video. It's probably like an hour long. I don't know where OBS is. There it is. Can't tell. I'll have to stop recording and find out.